On a farm, a middle-aged farmer, Oliver, his son Henry, and a boy named Tucker are guiding the sheep back to the barn. It's a small village where Henry's family lives and takes care of sheep. Tucker helps the family in the routine work. Everything is going smoothly, but Henry's older brother, Angus, is watching them from a distance. He feels jealous because he doesn't have the same skills as Henry when it comes to working on the farm. Angus also has a broken leg, so he has to stay at home all day long. This makes him even more upset. Because of his anger, Angus decides to take it out on Henry. He goes to Henry's ram, whose name is Dudley. Angus is holding an axe in his hands. With a sudden motion of his hands, he uses his full might and spears the head of that lamb with the axe. A few minutes later, Henry returns to the farm on his motorcycle and starts looking for Dudley, but the ram is missing. Henry goes into the barn to check, but there is darkness inside. Suddenly, the dead body of Dudley falls on him with no skin on the body, and his head is cut. Henry is shocked when he sees Dudley's body being thrown down from the roof. Things get even worse when Angus, wearing Dudley's skin, walks toward Henry. Henry gets traumatized by the scene and starts crying for help. He doesn't know what to do as he gets frozen by the unexpected event. Just then, a farm worker named Mrs. Mack arrives and interrupts them. She tells them that their father has been in a motorcycle crash and didn't survive. The scene shifts to 15 years after this terrible event. Henry now lives in a big city, but today, he is coming back to visit his late father's farm. But because of what his brother did all those years ago, Henry is deeply scared of sheep. He has developed a fear and can't even go near one. When Henry's taxi gets struck by the herd of sheep, Henry gets extremely scared again. The taxi driver thinks that Henry must have grown up in the city and that it was the first time he had visited the farm, which is why he was scared of animals. But Henry tells him that his childhood was spent on the village farm. When Henry still doesn't go away, he calls his therapist. But unfortunately, the therapist is also not available at that time. Luckily, the herd goes away after a few minutes, and the taxi continues towards Henry's old village home. At the same time, two environmental activists named Experience and Grant are also heading to the farm. They believe that there is a secret lab in the village where strange and harmful experiments are done on animals. They want to find out the truth and expose it. A few minutes later, Henry arrives at his old home. The place looks quiet and empty. He walks into his father's office and gets scared again by the head trophies of sheep present on the walls. Then he starts looking at some old photos. Just then, someone comes up behind him and points a shotgun at the back of his head. Luckily, it was Mrs. Mack who had pointed the gun at Henry. She is still living at his old house and doing the home chores. When she sees that it is Henry in front of her, she apologizes for thinking he is an intruder and gives him a hug. After talking for a while and catching up, Henry goes to look for his brother. Actually, it was Angus who had called him back just to buy his half of the farm. Also, Henry's therapist has been asking him again and again to visit his farms to get rid of the fear of sheep. At that time, Angus is practicing for a speech in front of empty chairs. He is going to present a new variant of sheep, which he has genetically engineered at his own labs. That's why Angus is looking after all the preparations. When Henry meets him, he isn't sure if he really wants to sell the farm. It's the only thing left that reminds him of their father. But Angus promises to pay him right away and calls him into his office to give him a check worth half the price of farms. Angus is still a very cold person who does not love his brother. He doesn't even give a hug to his brother, who has come back to the village after so many years. While this is happening, the two activists have just reached the farm. They find the secret lab nearby. They see a scientist named Dr. Astrid Rush, along with her team, unloading something strange from a truck. Since the group is busy, Grant sneaks in to check what they are carrying. He finds 3 big fluid-filled cylinders inside a box, but the scientist notices him and tells her team to catch him. Grant quickly grabs one of the cylinders and runs off with Experience into the forest. Once they get far enough, the two activists stop to take a closer look at the cylinder. They are shocked to see that it contains an embryo of a genetically modified creature in some type of fluid, which can be amniotic fluid. They are happy that with this proof, they can expose the farm owner and stop his experiments for good. But before they can leave, Astrid and her assistants arrive in the forest and begin searching for them. Grant runs ahead to try and get away, but while running, he trips over a branch and falls down. Also, he drops the cylinder. He quickly gets up and looks for the container, but the glass has broken during the fall and the creature inside is gone. A few seconds later, the creature shows up behind him. It turns out to be a mutant sheep with abnormal weight and height. Its shape is also very weird, and it is unrealistically energetic and active. Just then, it bites Grant on the ear very tightly. Grant struggles hard to get away and fails to free himself. He hits the creature with a bark and finally manages to push the creature away, but the bite leaves him hurt and he starts to feel sick. At the same time, Henry has just signed the papers to sell his part of the farm. He then asks Angus what he plans to do with the property. Angus says he is putting his money into agricultural science and that he will soon change the industry with his latest project. Now that the contract is signed, Angus tells Henry to leave. But before going, Henry wants to say goodbye to Mrs. Mack. She gives him a special gift, which is his father's old trophy. It was the one he won for being the best sheep shearer in the area. Henry's father always wanted this trophy to be given to Henry. Mrs. Mack also tells Henry that his childhood friend Tucker is now the manager of the farm. Just then, Tucker comes in too. Mrs. Mack asks Tucker to show Henry the rest of the property. The two friends are happy to see each other again and head out to the countryside, where the flock of sheep is kept. But at the same time, the little mutant sheep has also arrived there. It lets out a strange cry, and a nearby lamb hears it. The lamb walks over and finds the weird creature crawling on the ground. When the lamb gets close, the mutant sheep bites its snout. A little later, Tucker drives Henry into the countryside in his truck. They soon spot the same lamb standing in the middle of the road with its snout injured. Henry's fear of sheep returns, and he keeps himself away from that sheep. Tucker tells him not to worry and walks over to move the lamb to the other side of the fence. As soon as both of them get out of the car, Experience suddenly appears there. Without them noticing, she grabs Tucker's rifle from inside the truck. She points the gun at them and tells them to follow her into the woods. There, she asks where Grant is. Neither of the boys knows who Grant is, but Henry says his brother Angus might be able to help her find Grant. When Experience learns that Henry is Angus's brother, she becomes angrier. She points the gun at him and threatens to shoot. However, the young woman doesn't know how to unlock the gun, so Tucker offers to help. But he is very clever. In an attempt to teach her how to unlock the gun, he quickly grabs the gun back. Realizing she has been tricked, the woman leaves and goes back to searching for Grant. At that time, Grant is in another part of the forest and is acting strangely because of the infection due to the bite of that genetically engineered creature. Even though he has always cared about animals and the environment, the infection changes him. He loses control and ends up eating a small rabbit that was passing by. It looks like he knows what he is doing, but still can't control himself. He is also ashamed of eating that rabbit. Meanwhile, Tucker and Henry return to the truck. There, they run into Experience again. She says sorry for pointing the gun at them and explains that she broke into the farm to stop the strange experiments being done on the animals. Henry doesn't understand what she's talking about, as he is unaware of the experiments and lab. But before he can ask, Tucker notices smoke coming from the house of one of the workers, Mike. The three of them go to check it out and find a pot of pasta on fire in the kitchen. The house is a mess, as if there had been a fight. Tucker starts looking for Mike, but instead of finding him, the same lamb with the injured snout shows up. The lamb comes toward them, so they run and hide in one of the rooms. There, they find Mike in a miserable condition. His throat has been eaten. The lamb then starts smashing its head against the door and makes a hole in it. Tucker is forced to shoot the creature with his rifle to stop it, but the sheep is still not dead and scares everyone again. Then Tucker puts another bullet into its head, and finally, it's dead now. After this, the three decide to leave the house, but outside, they are scared again by finding more sheep scattered around. Thankfully, these ones don't seem to be infected. Still, Henry is too scared to go near them because of his phobia. Experience believes in spirituality, so she uses one of her way to help Henry by telling him to focus only on her voice. The plan works, and Henry slowly begins to move. Just as they reach the truck, an infected sheep jumps into the car and tries to bite Tucker. Quickly, Henry and Experience climb into the back of the truck, and Tucker steps on the gas to try and shake off the animal. Henry tries to help his friend by turning on a chainsaw that was in the back of the truck. But because the road is rough and the truck is shaking, he accidentally drops the chainsaw onto the road. Things get more chaotic, and even though Tucker tries to fight off the ram, it manages to bite his leg from over his shoes. Still, he somehow gets free and climbs into the back with the others. But now the truck is out of control and heading straight for a cliff. Just before it falls from the cliff, Henry, Experience, Tucker, and their dog all jump out. The truck flies off the edge and falls into the lake. The group is safe for now, and the sheep is dead with the crash of the truck. Now they need to get back to the farm and figure out what's really happening. Henry is also worried about Angus, as he doesn't want any infected sheep to bite his elder brother. Meanwhile, Grant is wandering around the property with no clear direction. His body is getting worse from the infection. His teeth are changing, and white hair, like sheep's wool, is growing on his face. As he walks along the road, he crosses paths with Angus. Angus gets angry seeing someone standing in the road and gets out of his car to talk. But Grant reacts absurdly, bites Angus's hand, and then runs away. Scene shifts back to Henry and his friends who are making their way to the farm, but Tucker starts to feel unwell because of the bite on his foot. He takes off his boot to check the injury and is shocked to see that his foot has started to look like a sheep's foot. They now need to find a cure quickly, or Tucker will turn into a human-sheep hybrid in a very short period of time. The situation gets even worse when they see more infected sheep appear at the top of the mountain. The sheep start running toward them at full speed. Tucker tells his dog to run home and find some help. Even with his injured foot, he does his best to run with Henry and Experience. After a long struggle, they reach Angus's lab. Inside, they find the body of a sheep hanging from the ceiling. Its heart is still pumping, though the sheep is dead now. The three of them are scared by what they see and realize horrible experiments have been done there. Then, they come face to face with Angus and Dr. Astrid. Henry tries to warn his brother that the sheep are spreading a dangerous infection everywhere, but Angus doesn't believe him. He says he is only trying to create genetically modified sheep. His goal is to show his creation to investors in an upcoming presentation and make his business even more successful. We saw Angus earlier practicing for this presentation. Henry keeps trying to convince his brother and tells Tucker to show what the infection has done to his foot. But before Tucker can show his foot, the doctor suddenly injects Tucker with an injection and knocks him down. Henry tries to help him, but Tucker tells Henry and Experience to run away from the lab. With no other option, the two run and are chased again by the infected sheep. Soon, the sheep trap them from all sides, and they are confined to a deep pit where the remains of old experiments are thrown. Angus shows up a moment later, and Henry begs his brother to help them, but Angus refuses and says they won't stop his plans. Again, it is confirmed that Angus is a very cold person, and he doesn't even care about his brother a little. As the sheep get closer, Henry and Experience slip and fall into the pit, landing among the body parts of different animals. Now they must follow a tunnel to find a way out. Experience lights a candle to see in the dark. When they reach the end of the tunnel, they find a small hole that they can crawl through, but Experience refuses to go in. Just like Henry is afraid of sheep, she is afraid of narrow, dark spaces and doesn't have the courage to go through the tight space. Things get even worse when they hear the sound of sheep above, indicating that the animals have also jumped into the pit and are coming after them. Henry then calms her down by asking her to focus on his voice, just like she had done earlier, to help him face his fear. Because of this, the young woman also finds the courage to face her fear and begins crawling through the narrow tunnel. But the sheep are getting closer and try to bite Henry's foot. Luckily, Experience reaches the end of the tunnel and pulls Henry out just in time. The sheep get stuck on the other side, and Henry kills the sheep by throwing the candle back inside and setting them on fire. Experience thanks him for saving her life. Finally, Henry and Experience get out of the tunnel and run to a nearby stable to clean themselves. But suddenly, they hear a strange sound coming from inside. When they go to check, they find a giant creature that is half human and half sheep walking toward them. Experience notices that the creature is wearing the same clothes and has the same bag as her friend, which means the hybrid is actually Grant. The infection has completely changed him. Experience tries to speak to him and remind him who she is, but Grant doesn't respond. Instead, he attacks Henry and throws him across the stable with one powerful hit. Experience runs to help him, and the two of them escape from the stable. Henry quickly shuts the door and locks it from the outside, trapping Grant inside. They managed to get away from the monster, but Henry was worried that his friend Tucker would also turn into one, as he was also bitten by the sheep. Just as he feared, back in the laboratory, Tucker is already starting to change. His teeth are becoming shaped like a sheep's. The doctor makes some of the antidotes to test, but instead of giving it right away, she decides to wait and see what will happen to Tucker after the infection spreads more. After a few minutes, Tucker fully turns into a half-human, half-sheep creature, just like Grant. Then, the doctor gives him the antidote. Luckily, it works. The transformation is reversed, and Tucker returns to normal. The doctor is pleased with how her experiment went. She takes a sample from Tucker so she can try to copy the antidote's effects. But as soon as she walks out of the lab, she sees her assistant being eaten by an infected sheep. Scared, the doctor runs toward the forest, trying to escape. However, her feet get stuck in a puddle of mud. As she struggles to stand up, she sees the feet of an infected sheep in front of her. The animal doesn't wait and starts eating her right away. Meanwhile, Angus returns to the farm to prepare for his big presentation to the investors. But when he looks in the mirror, he notices that his face is paler than normal, and the bite on his hand looks worse. Still, he heads to the stage and begins to show off the results of his groundbreaking experiments. Finally, Angus tells his assistants to open a special container on the stage. Inside is Oldfield, which is a sheep that was completely made in the lab. The crowd is amazed by the strange animal. It looks beautiful and cuter than ordinary sheep. But suddenly, Oldfield begins to scream loudly as if something terrible is about to happen. And he's right, as within moments, a large group of infected sheep storm the area, attacking everyone they see. A brutal massacre begins, and Angus is also unable to stop it. So he grabs Oldfield and tries to escape. On the way, he runs into another infected sheep, but instead of attacking him, the creature simply walks away. Angus gets confused. He looks down at his hand and sees that it has turned into a large sheep's foot. It now seems clear that the infected sheep won't harm anyone who has already been infected. Also, Angus is quickly turning into a hybrid himself. Soon after, Henry and Experience arrive and see the sheep attacking everyone. Mrs. Mack also drives up in her car after hearing the too much bleating of sheep and quickly picks them up to take them back to the farm. On the way, they see the road filled with violent, meat-eating sheep. When night falls, they reach the house and try to call for help using the kitchen phone, but all the phone lines are dead. Suddenly, Grant breaks into the house and throws Henry out with a strong hit. In a panic, Henry tries to defend himself by grabbing Mrs. Mack's shotgun, but she doesn't have any shells, and the hybrid attacks him again. Just when Henry can't fight anymore, Experience saves him by stabbing a stick through Grant's neck, knocking him out cold. She attacked at an acupuncture point of Grant to make him unconscious for some time. They win the fight for now, but the infected sheep start surrounding the house and will break in soon. To protect themselves, Henry and Experience push furniture against the doors, while Mrs. Mack tells them there's a working phone in Angus's office. They can use that phone to call for help. Henry rushes there and is shocked to find his brother Angus hiding inside along with Oldfield. When Henry sees his brother, he's furious that Angus's actions have caused so much chaos. Realizing his brother won't do anything to fix it, Henry decides to take matters into his own hands. He grabs their father's old rifle and swears to put an end to the madness, starting by killing Oldfield. But Angus steps in front of the sheep, refusing to let it die. He reveals that Oldfield was created using his own genes, so it is very dear to him. He also reveals that he was bitten and will soon become one of the hybrids. After hearing this, Henry points the gun at his brother, ready to shoot, but in the end, he lowers the rifle and walks away. He rejoins Mrs. Mack and Experience, calling them to escape with him. Before leaving, he takes back his father's old trophy as a keepsake. As they reach the front of the house, they see the whole area surrounded by infected sheep. In the middle of them, Angus and Oldfield are escaping toward a private airstrip. Henry realizes his brother plans to fly away, and if he does, the infection will spread throughout the country. Just as he prepares to stop him, Henry looks at his arm and notices something terrifying. He was bitten, too, during the fight with Grant. Realizing he's putting Mrs. Mack and Experience in danger by making them go with him, Henry tells them to stay in the car and get to safety. Once again, Experience is surprised by his bravery and kisses him. She asks him to come back safely. Now, Henry needs a way to sneak past the infected sheep. He notices fur coats on the car seats and puts one on his back, hoping to disguise himself as one of the flock. When he is crawling through the flock, one of the sheep comes behind her as if it wants to be intimate with Henry. However, Henry is worried that his disguise would be revealed, so he uses his father's trophy to attack that sheep, causing it to back off. The other sheep notices this move, but because the infection is already spreading through his body, the other sheep and hybrids let him pass. They think that Henry is also one of them. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mack and Experience decide to help and drive the car toward him, blasting away at the sheep with a shotgun. At the airstrip, Angus starts the plane to escape with Oldfield, but the infection overtakes him. He begins to transform into a hybrid. His teeth fall out, his face distorts, and his hands become sheep's hooves. He screams in agony as his body continues to mutate. Henry arrives at the warehouse and searches for his brother. Suddenly, Angus ambushes him and pins him against the wall, revealing his terrifying new hybrid form. Henry tries to reach out to him, saying that if things had been different when they were kids, they could have run the farm together, but Angus doesn't listen and keeps attacking. Desperate, Henry grabs his father's trophy and puts it around his neck, but it isn't enough to stop his brother. The transformation worsens, and Angus becomes an even more powerful hybrid. Henry tries to grab the rifle, but the monster knocks it away with a single blow and throws him aside. Just then, Angus's plane begins taxiing down the runway, and Henry gets an idea. He'll use it to stop the monster. At the same time, Tucker's small dog appears and starts barking, which distracts Angus. Henry urges the dog to keep barking to draw Angus's attention away from the plane. The plan works, and the monster is struck by the plane's propellers and torn apart. Finally, the beast is defeated now. Afterward, Henry notices that the infection is starting to take hold of his arm and becomes distracted. Just then, Angus rises behind him, ready to attack again. Fortunately, Tucker arrives in a jeep and quickly pours a nozzle of a container into Angus's snout to convert him back to human. He'd just given him the antidote to the infection, which cured Tucker earlier. He then does the same to Henry, who soon recovers and is fully cured of the infection. Tucker explains that he managed to retrieve the antidote from the lab and that now they can reverse the effects for everyone. Angus also returns to normal, but his left side of the body badly injured. He is lying on the ground in a half-dead state. They leave him there and return to Experience to explain everything that happened. The next step is to gather all the infected sheep into the barn and administer the antidote, but there isn't enough for all of them. they also have to treat humans, which should be their priority. That's when Angus appears and, despite his injuries, he insists on continuing with his plan to become the sheep again. But now that he's no longer infected, the sheep don't recognize him. Instead, they turn on him and begin devouring him alive. With his brother gone, Henry strikes a match and tosses it into the flock, setting all the infected sheep ablaze. The methane gas being produced by the sheep farts helps catch the fire quickly. This was the only way left behind to tackle the infection. The next morning, Henry and his friends round up all the infected hybrids and begin curing them with the antidote. Among them is Grant, who finally returns to normal, but is filled with guilt over the animals he devoured while infected. In the end, Henry chooses to remain on his father's farm with Experience and Tucker. Tucker's loyal dog also stays on the property. He is ever watchful instead of barking all the time. In the end, he lets out a sheep-like bleat, hinting that he too has been infected.